Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy podcast. As always, we're going to run through some of the big updates of the day, some of the transfer stories. But the main focus of today's show, with this being such a quiet transfer window, is that we're going to have a look at the players that are returning from injury, see what updates are out there about them, and also look at their numbers and how they're going to impact us throughout the season. So over the last 10 minutes or so, we have had some news from Fabrizio Romano that Arsenal are open to selling Nuno Tavares from Marseille. However, there is no break clause in that loan deal with Nottingham Forest. So a deal does hinge on Forest being willing to let Tavares go. So it's reported that Marseille are very keen on signing Tavares again, which is somewhat surprising given how well his loan started, but how quickly it tapered off. So let's see where that goes. If there is a chance to sell him permanently, I feel that's a good deal for Arsenal. It's one that we should have probably seen a permanent transfer on in the summer. And these loan deals and these players not going on permanent deals is affecting our incomes. Because had we have been able to shift 2 or 3 players, the likes of Tierney, Lokonga and Tavares, all 3 of them going for around kind of 60 million, which isn't out of the question given kind of Tierney taking up the bulk of that fee. And Tavares is sold pretty much for what we got him for. Same with Lokonga. That very quickly comes to that mark, and that enables another signing. So if we can get Tavares out the door on a permanent deal now, that's good news for all parties. Alongside that, we are hearing news that Zubamendi is set to be an Arsenal player in the summer. Now, that's one that has gone on for around 18 months. We know Arteta was very, very keen last year. We know we looked at him again in the summer. But Zubamendi has got really strong ties to Sociedad and wants to see them succeed. So if that's true, it's very, very good news for Arsenal. And it's a deal that would hinge on the release clause being paid. So let's wait and see with that one. But the things that we are more informed about are our own players in the squad we've got. We know that players are returning soon from injury. So let's have a look at what players are returning, what they can bring to us, and have a look at the squad as a whole, because despite the recent drop in form, we have got a very, very good squad. We just happen to have lost a few players in key positions and our finishing went to pot. So first up, Declan Rice is expected to be fit for the Forest game. Now, there's 10 days between Palace and Forest. So obviously Rice went off after around 70 minutes with a hamstring sort of hinge at the weekend, where we saw him slightly, I wouldn't say limped off. He did go off holding his lower back hamstring area. And it was reported that he would get a scan on that. Now, Sami Mokbel at the Daily Mail is generally very, very reliable with Arsenal. He is one of the top journalists. So we heard Arteta say that this was precautionary that he took Rice off. We were 3-0 up at the time. And that's something that's good to see. We've got Jorginho in the squad. We don't need to absolutely hammer Declan Rice. If there is any kind of feeling in that area, we've got a very, very good player who's an experienced winner to come on and take that position. So I never expected him to be out long. Arteta was very positive, and that's a big, big piece of news for Arsenal. And in the same article, the report was that Jurrien Timber has been progressing very, very well. We have seen the videos of Arsenal that he's training with the ball. Now, training with the ball and training in full contact are very different things. So whenever Timber comes into full contact training, there is likely that there will be around 4 weeks of training, possibly more. And that's to see firstly, they'll have to ramp up his load management. Secondly, they'll have to look at how his body responds, because it's not just the knee. Having been out so long, you also look at any kind of injury setbacks to other muscles around that. And that is very common. We see a player come out back from a long-term injury and they suffer another injury, not necessarily to the area that's kept them out. And a big part of that is just because those muscles haven't been used at that level for a long period of time. So whilst you are still able to do exercises in the gym, and these athletes will be kept incredibly fit, when you go into Premier League level football and even at training with the squad, the intensity is so high that you do see setbacks. So there will be very careful monitoring. So the article itself said that he was expected to be back in full training next month, which is very quick for an ACL injury. So realistically, March is probably the date. However, since this went out last night, it has now been updated with just saying that he's progressing very well. So there's mixed reports around his actual comeback date. And I think everyone would be reluctant to put a firm date on that, given the seriousness of the injury. Alongside that, we've seen Arteta say about Fabio Vieira that this was last week, this story went out, which was he'll be back in a few weeks. So within the same interview, Arteta said that Vieira wouldn't be available for the Palace game. So I think realistically, we can expect Vieira's return around Forest or potentially towards the Liverpool game. But he's a player that's been out for a few weeks, and we should see him back soon. And alongside him, like this story has come from Talking Ball. I don't know the reliability of the source or much about this account. I know it gets a lot of engagement. There's a big following, but it states that Thomas Partey is back in training. And there are a lot of conspiracies around Thomas Partey and that he's been back in training for a while and he didn't go to the AFCON, and that's why Arsenal have kept it quiet that he's training. Look, if Thomas Partey was actually back in full training, he would have gone to the AFCON. There is no way a player like Thomas Partey chooses to sit out of the biggest tournament of the nation because he wants to be back fit for Arsenal. That's the reality of it. This player's got nearly 50 caps for Ghana. He's probably their best player. And if he was fit, he would have made the squad. Whilst us fans are very happy that he didn't go for potential injury setbacks, Thomas Partey would have done everything he could to be fit for that. And the reality is, if he's back in full training now, Ghana have now played 3 games at the AFCON, and it's probably going to be at least a week before we see Thomas Partey. So that's probably the reason that he's missed the tournament. He's already missed the bulk of their games. But with Thomas Partey returning, I thought I'd have a look into some of the numbers and do some comparisons between him and Declan Rice, because there have been a lot of shouts about about what Arsenal have lacked with Thomas Partey not being in the squad, and a lot of people have pitted that against Rice. And I also pulled in some comparisons to Jorginho. However, I've realized that it's the wrong Jorginho has been pulled through here. So we will focus on Partey and Rice. Now, the comparison stats pull Partey's numbers from last season, given he's barely played this year, and Rice's numbers from this season, which, look, it's a difficult comparison because last year Thomas Partey played in an extremely settled side with Granit Xhaka beside him, who was, again, a very experienced player. This year, Declan Rice has had a mixed midfield. He's had Jorginho there at times. He's had Kai Havertz. He's had Fabio Vieira. Martin Odegaard's missed some time. And he's played with multiple players. Smith Rowe's been in that team as well. So Declan Rice has never had a fully settled midfield. And in front of him, we've had Saka out, we've had Jesus out, we've had Martinelli out. So Trossard's come in. Trossard's also played at left 8. So I guess the tinkering with the team as a result of injuries has changed a lot. So whereas Thomas Partey last season was used to playing with Vieira, with Xhaka and Odegaard in front of him, Declan Rice hasn't had that luxury. But first off, I decided to compare their defensive numbers. And it's interesting to see, if you look at ball recoveries, Thomas Partey made 225 last season. However, we played a much more open game of football. And Declan Rice this year, with us playing a more solid game with a higher percentage of possession, playing higher up the park, has made 104. So if you look at those numbers, they're not far apart. So Thomas Partey is from 33 games. Declan Rice is from 21 here. But duels contested, again, if you look at those numbers, again, very similar numbers, because you're looking at Partey for the full season and Rice for just 21 games. Tackles made, again, very similar. And we're going to look at the per 90 stats after this. So what is interesting, though, is the number of interceptions made. Declan Rice has already made 3 interceptions more than Thomas Partey, and that's something that I think that was one of the reasons we bought Declan Rice. It's his ability off the ball to intercept, break up play, and do these dirty jobs and really get his team going from deep. And similarly, if you look at the fouls conceded from attempted tackles, that is actually more skewed in Partey's favour. But again, there isn't a huge amount in it, with Declan Rice giving away 15 free kicks from attempted tackles, which I didn't expect to see, given that he is an English player and we normally see a bit more favouritism towards them. But when you look at the numbers per 90, there are a lot of numbers really favouring Thomas Partey, making more ball recoveries per 90. But again, that is down to they playing higher up the pitch. He making more tackles again. That's probably down to us being more open last season and playing with a lower percentage of possession. But what is a very, very telling and very kind of big difference here is the number of aerial duels won per 90. Is the percentage aerial duels won per 90 is massively in Thomas Partey's favour, and shows Declan Rice isn't the strongest player in the air, and it is a big area for improvement. But as you can see, Rice very much dominates the interceptions per 90 in a way that Thomas Partey doesn't. And but the biggest criticism hasn't been off the ball with missing Partey. It's been towards Declan Rice on the ball. And these stats are very interesting. Again, we're going to look at the total numbers versus the per 90. So touches, again, very similar, because we're talking about half a season here versus a full season. Possession lost, again, there isn't a huge amount in this. Goals, Declan Rice has already scored the same number of goals in 21 games as Partey did in 33. And they're not players that we would want to be relying on for our goals. Passes completed, again, these numbers are all very, very similar. There isn't a huge amount in it, which is why the per 90 numbers are very interesting. And when you look at it, the number of through balls attempted, again, Thomas Partey makes more through ball attempts. I think anyone with eyes can see that. But with forward passes, Declan Rice is hitting very similar numbers to what Partey does. What Thomas Partey brings to the Arsenal team that Declan Rice doesn't is the ability to drop that shoulder on the half turn, beat a man with ease, and play that ball through the lines into Odegaard or into that player at left, be it Havertz, Smith Rowe, whoever's playing there. But similarly, what Declan Rice has over Partey is the ability to really turn and carry and drive at force. Thomas Partey is he is a strong runner. He doesn't have the same power as Declan Rice, but he's still an exceptional carrier of the ball. And I think one of the things that people have missed, and because it's something that it's very easy to say, well, actually, this player does this and this player did this better. What we should be looking at is how these two players can complement each other. Thomas Partey plays a lot more through balls than Declan Rice. They play similar numbers of forward passes. Rice makes more carries per game. They have similar levels of touches per game. With these two in the side together, Arsenal could have one of the most dominant midfields in the Premier League. You have those two in there. You have Partey's ability to play those through balls, and you've got Rice's recovery and driving abilities. With Martin Odegaard in there, these two together, real duel winners, big physical, strong players, give Odegaard a lot more time and space to play, whilst also being exceptional ball players themselves. So when Thomas Partey comes back, having that midfield three, and then having a player like Kai Havertz on the bench, Emil Smith Rowe, we've got Fabio Vieira coming back as well, who we're going to look at. These players all add a huge amount of strength to the Arsenal team, and will add a lot more creativity and should make us a lot more fluid as a team. But on to Fabio Vieira. Look, I don't think anyone's going to say that Fabio Vieira has been a successful signing. He's a player with superb creative ability. He's a player that's almost developed in the reverse order. Most players have the basics and then have to develop their final ball. It feels like Fabio Vieira has all the creative assets, that final ball, the decision making in the final third, but he lacks those basics the ability to arrive on time to avoid duels, all these small details, which I'm sure will have been worked on in the training ground. But if you look at it, 30 games, 2 Premier League goals, and he's created 5 big chances in that time. He's got 4 assists, and he's a player that we know he's a very good ball striker. He can hit very good corners. He can hit free kicks. He's someone that can see passes that others can't. And I would say Odegaard's probably the only player in the squad that can see some of the balls Vieira sees. So getting him fit and getting him firing is going to be very important for Arsenal. But it's one of those that we have to look at it and see, how can we get this player integrated into the squad in a positive way that really helps the team grow as a unit? Because right now we're creating chances again, but Vieira is a player that can finish, and he's someone that if we can get him into those positions and really get him firing with this midfield and the players that we've got coming back, he could be a player that's kind of slept on, because he can play in either the 8 positions, or he can play on either wing. So we saw him in pre-season being used on the right wing, where he actually did very well. And he is a player that prefers that right-hand side. However, Odegaard and Saka do occupy those positions currently, and he's someone that if he's given a chance to play on one of those, there is the option to move Odegaard to the left and give Martinelli that real passer that can open him up. Because as much as I love Kai Havertz, he isn't a creative passer in the way someone like Martin Odegaard or Fabio Vieira is. And I think this is where Vieira can give us something that we currently don't have, especially later in games when things start to open up. He's someone I want to see wanting to get on the ball more and wanting to really emphasize his talent and show himself in games and really take ownership. And if you look at his stats per 90, because a lot of his game time has been off the bench. So 0.37 goals per 90. It's not great. And assists as well. You are looking, this is from last season, you're looking at a player who needs to do a lot more. The talent's there, but this is a £35 million signing who we need to see more from. And we talk about the impacts of certain players, but actually the left 8 position, Vieira should have been the heir to Granit Xhaka, and he's a player that we need to see more from. So going into the kind of second half of the season, he's someone that really needs to stamp his authority on the team and really needs to be that player that can come in and create for us, because we know that we've got a problem with our strikers scoring. We know that our strikers don't have the most clinical nature. So to counteract that, we need to create a volume, and we have been doing that. But having a player that can add even more to that and really open up defenses will only help us as a team. Interestingly, when you compare their numbers, Vieira, Odegaard, and Havertz, Vieira is a player that scores more goals per 90 than Martin Odegaard, and with Kai Havertz, but that number is skewed because he is coming on later in games. He plays less 90 minutes than the other two, and he's someone that he scored a penalty this season as well, so he hasn't got a lot of minutes. He's also someone that he does like those 3 balls. As I've said, the reverse development with Fabio Vieira, he will attempt a lot more 3 balls, whereas if you look at Kai Havertz, he doesn't do them. That is one of the big weaknesses in Havertz's game. And same with forward passes. We want to see more of those from both players. Vieira, I guess, isn't on the pitch long enough to really make an impact in that sense, but this is a player that if you look at his numbers in comparison to Havertz and Odegaard, he's coming out very strong in the per 90 minutes compared to both of them. But one of the really interesting things that we're seeing, and this is from Opta, is the Arsenal's recent play and the numbers behind it with the XG. So when you look at the XG against and you look at the XG for and you compare it to where we are and where we were, Arsenal are really, really improving. We're a team that is very much on the up. And right now, the only thing that we are lacking is finishing. We saw it at the weekend against Palace where we were clinical. And we've actually played our best football over the last 10 matches, but we haven't had the results. Before that, we were we were fairly stale to watch. We were very stiff. We were a very static team, but the fluidity is coming back into the team. And as a result of that, our strikers are getting more chances than they were, and we've just been incredibly wasteful. So if that can improve, this is something that we're going to see results coming. Someone was going to get hammered, and Palace were that side. I've said it for the last couple of months. We are clicking as a team. And no matter how much you can scream and shout and try to let on that we are not a good side, we're a very good side who are lacking goals at the minute. And these numbers are proving it. And also a very interesting one to wrap up. Scott Willis from the Arsenal Vision. Make sure you follow this guy. Great data guy. But since Jesus came back, Arsenal have 2.2 non-pen XG, which is the best in the league. So this is showing that we are a side that are really creating. We are really coming back into form. And we're someone that, if these goals can come on, our strikers can be that bit more clinical, we will be able to really punish teams, and we will be able to get results going, because we know we're good enough. We know we can dominate games, and it's just a matter of time before we really see that coming. But thank you to everyone that's joined the show. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you for joining, and have a great day, everyone. We will be back on Friday with another 15-minute show, and hopefully a new sign-in or some kind of update in potentially a versatile fullback to talk about. Have a great day. Thank you, and goodbye.